Benjamin Bibi Netanyahu, born on 21 October 1949, has been in power as the Prime Minister of Israel since 2022, previously holding the office from 1996 to 1999 and again from 2009 to 2021. He is the chairman of the Likud party. Netanyahu holds the record as the longest-serving Prime Minister in the nation's history, with a total tenure of over 16 years in service. He is also the first Prime Minister to have been born in Israel after his Declaration of Independence. Netanyahu has been married 3 times. His first marriage is to Miriam Weizman, whom he meets in Israel. In 1978, during the Weizman's pregnancy, he engages in an affair with Fleur Cates, a non-Jewish British student he meets at the university library. This liaison leads to the termination of his marriage to Miriam when she discovers the indiscretion. In 1981, he ties the knot with Cates, who has converted to Judaism. Their journey together in Israel concludes with Cates filing for divorce in 1988. Benjamin and Miriam Weizman's daughter, seldom discussed, goes by the name Nava Ruth. She is an ultra-Orthodox residing with her husband and 3 children in the Mia Shearim neighborhood of Jerusalem. His third wife, Sarah Ben Artzai, crosses paths with him while working as a flight attendant on an EIAI flight from New York to Israel. Simultaneously, she pursues a master's degree in psychology. The union between them takes place in 1991, resulting in the birth of 2 sons. Yair, born on July 26, 1991, a former soldier in the IDF spokesperson's unit, and Avner, born on October 10, 1994, a National Bible champion and winner of the National Bible Quiz for youth in Kiryat Shemona, also a former soldier in the IDF Combat Intelligence Collection Corps. When the voters in Israel opt to reinstate Benjamin Netanyahu to power, they unwittingly elevate 2 individuals they haven't directly chosen: his wife Sarah and his son Yair, both deeply entwined in his political journey. Sarah Netanyahu and Yair, at the age of 32, have played pivotal roles in shaping Netanyahu's election campaigns and energizing his support base. Nevertheless, critics accuse them of exerting unwarranted influence over Netanyahu, pressuring him on policy matters, influencing political appointments, and in Yair's case, meddling in national security affairs. Their frequent appearances in the news media often entangle in sensational and lurid narratives, and their involvement in the Israeli courts contribute to a reality show-like aura surrounding the family. Sarah Netanyahu, aged 64, has consistently made headlines facing allegations of misappropriating public funds, extravagant household spending, and accepting gifts from world leaders, among other accusations. In 2019, she enters into a plea bargain to resolve charges of misusing $100,000 in public funds for opulent meals from celebrity chefs at the Prime Minister's official residence, despite having cooks on the government payroll. Sarah has also become entangled in Netanyahu's corruption trial, contributing to the country's prolonged political crisis. In exchange for political favors, Benjamin Netanyahu allegedly accepts gifts from billionaire associates, including tens of thousands of dollars, crates of champagne, and lavish jewelry for his wife Sarah. Allegedly, he is engaged in behind-the-scenes agreements with newspaper publishers to secure more favorable coverage for his wife. Recently, a parliamentary committee approves additional funds for the Netanyahus, including a substantial increase each year for Sarah's clothing and makeup expenses. Critics of Netanyahu's family accuse Sarah of interfering in the Prime Minister's decision-making process. Former officials testify in court, asserting that Sarah exerts undue influence over high-level security appointments. She stands accused of pushing Netanyahu further to the right and actively supporting his government's pursuit of a comprehensive overhaul of the country's judiciary, an initiative that has sparked some of the most significant protests in the Israeli history, drawing widespread condemnations nationally and internationally. Yair Netanyahu is currently entangled in another defamation case involving a legal dispute with former left-wing lawmaker Stav Shafir. The younger Netanyahu faced a temporary removal from the courtroom during a late November hearing due to constant interruptions and reportedly utters a sexist slur against Mrs. Shafir on his way out, as documented by court reporters. The challenges of Benjamin Netanyahu. Do you believe Netanyahu's troubles in managing government affairs seem beyond responsible expectations? He himself doesn't hold such a view. Legal allegations against Netanyahu. The trial of Benjamin Netanyahu commences following investigations into allegations of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust involving both him and close political allies within his inner circle during his fourth and fifth terms as Israeli Prime Minister. The Israeli police initiate the investigation in December 2016, subsequently recommending indictments against Netanyahu. On 21 November 2019, he is officially indicted for breach of trust, accepting bribes, and fraud, leading him to formally relinquish his ministry portfolios, excluding the position of Prime Minister. His trial in the Jerusalem District Court officially begins on 24 May 2020, and witness testimony commences on 5 April 2021. The legal proceedings involve three distinct cases against Netanyahu. Case 1000, initiated in December 2016, revolves around valuable gifts and presents that he and his wife have received from two affluent businessmen over the years. In Case 2000, recorded conversations between Netanyahu and Arnon Moses, the chairman and editor of Yediot Ahronot, one of the largest newspapers in Israel, are discussed. The conversations include talks about potential legislation that could negatively impact Israel Hayom Yediot's major competitor. Case 4000 delves into the relationship between the telecommunications company Bezeq and its regulator, the Communication Ministry, which is under Netanyahu's leadership at the time. On 21 November 2019, he faces official charges of fraud and breach of trust in cases 1000 and 2000, along with charges of fraud, breach of trust, and receiving bribes in Case 4000. In September 2017, protesters initiate weekly Sunday rallies in Petah Tikva for 41 consecutive weeks, expressing their discontent with what they perceived as interference with the investigations and delays by Attorney General Avichai Mandelblit. Additionally, rallies against government corruptions take place in Tel Aviv's Robin Square. Despite being formally charged, Netanyahu remains in power, leading to a substantial growth in protests throughout 2020 to 2021. These protests become interconnected with the widespread demonstrations in 2023, triggered by the proposed judicial overhaul. Netanyahu, confronted with a barrage of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust allegations, vehemently denies all accusations and aggressively criticizes those seeking to prosecute him. Israel finds itself immersed in months of protests and political uncertainty over Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plans to overhaul the judicial system. Leading the most far-right government in Israel's history, Netanyahu faces accusations of exploiting and manipulating the legislation to evade his own legal troubles. He forms a coalition with several far-right parties: Jewish Power, led by Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Religious Zionist Party, led by Bezalel Smotrich, and the anti-LGBTQ party Noam. Since the beginning of the year, massive weekly protests have taken place opposing the government's reform plans. The magnitude of the protests has intensified, with tens of thousands of people filling the streets in towns and cities across the country. Protesters demand the cancellation of all planned reforms and the resignation of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. They receive support from Netanyahu's political rivals, former top officials in Israel's military, intelligence and security services, former chief justices, prominent legal figures, and business leaders, among others.
But I'm committed to doing everything I can to overcome these risks, to forge a better future for Israel and all of our peoples, all the peoples in our region.
Israel's political opposition has vehemently criticized Netanyahu's leadership, with many calling for his removal in the past. Amidst this chaotic political atmosphere and protests against Netanyahu's policies, as well as concerns about the damages he and his family impose on the Israeli society and security, Hamas attacks Israel. An attack like the one on October 7 by Hamas is not supposed to have been possible, certainly not with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the helm. He is touted by his acolytes as Mr.Security. He wants to be remembered as the defender of Israel. He proudly claims credit for 16 years of peace and prosperity under his leadership.
If I have to summarize my book, I'd say I've lived a life of purpose. I continue with a life of purpose. And the purpose is to ensure the security and prosperity.
It is under his successive administrations that Israel installs the Iron Dome system to intercept rockets from the Gaza Strip and constructs along the Gaza border a 40-mile, $1.1 billion fence equipped with underground sensors, remote-controlled weapons, and an expansive camera system. According to Netanyahu, his idea of a strong Israel could be seen in how Palestinians and their struggles seem almost invisible from the comfort of a Tel Aviv cafe. Yet, the apparent tranquility of the past 15 years rests on a web of illusions. The belief that Palestinians and their yearnings for freedom could be concealed behind concrete barriers and dismissed. The notion that any lingering resistance could be controlled using technology and superior firepower. The assumption that the global community, particularly Sunni Arab states, have become apathetic toward the Palestinian matter, allowing it to fade from the global agenda. Consequently, Israeli administrations think they could act without repercussions and face minimal consequences. The Hamas attack on October 7 exposes another facet of Bibi's perceived incompetence and autocratic leadership. His lack of readiness, inattention to security concerns, and prioritization of family and personal matters have fueled public disdain. Netanyahu's failure to detect the infiltration of the Palestinian group Hamas into Israeli territory on October 7 further contribute to widespread discontent. Examining Netanyahu's whereabouts during those times and its consequences vividly reveals a confused mind, a lack of focus, and a mastery over his security plans and duties. Many believe that the pressures from his family lead to power hunger, financial and ethical corruption, selfishness, and an abuse of power, undermining ethics and democracy. Such an individual can hardly be a messenger of security for the nation. Benjamin Netanyahu is positioned in a building the night before the October 7 attack, located at 9 Mordechai Caspi Street, Jerusalem. However, it's crucial to note that this isn't the official residence of the Prime Minister of the Zionist regime. The official residence of the Prime Minister and his family is on Aza Street 35, Jerusalem. The Falek family. Fima Falek is one of the Jewish financiers in the United States. Mr. Falek and his wife own almost 200 duty-free complexes worldwide, including duty-free American shops. Another duty-free complex owned by the Falek family is CTF Charity, which is currently the inheritance of the Falek brothers. Fima Falik passes away in 2012, and his wealth is now inherited by his 3 sons, Simon, Leon, and Jeremy. Simon Falik's wife is a vice president of the United States. He owns Suzia Diaries and Petrio Hecht Furniture. Leon Falik, the second son, owns Saget Winery and the Punko website for selling Saget products. Jeremy Falik, the third son, resides in the United States and is the founder of Perialis Cosmetic Products Company. Simon Falik owns 2 villas on Mordechai Caspi Street and hosts Benjamin Netanyahu for a while. Aza Street 35, Jerusalem. The official residence of Prime Minister is here. Notably, a recent budget allocation of 30 million shekels has been embarked for his reconstruction and equipping. Benjamin's makeup therapist, Mazel Yamin, appears at 9 p.m. according to the routine schedule. The only issue that is not routine is Mazel Yamin staying in that place. She leaves the place at 1:30 a.m. the next day. Due to pressure from Netanyahu's family, especially Sarah, Simon looks for other permanent settlement places, incurring expenses for the government. Sarah Netanyahu stays in Bialik Street 9, Tel Aviv, Jaffa for 4 nights after 22 days from the start of the Hamas attack, October 29th, utilizing its equipped shelter in case of emergency. During Sarah's stay in Bialik's house, Benjamin is stationed in Aza Street 35, Jerusalem. Candida Gettler, born in 1966, a British-German art collector, philanthropist, and former journalist, is married to Zach Gettler, born in 1955, a lawyer and a journalist. Zach Gettler is a close friend of Benjamin Netanyahu, hosting his 70th birthday in his house. He also hosts Sarah Netanyahu for 4 days. Mordechai Caspi Street, 29, Jerusalem, Israel. Another Falik's house in Mordechai Caspi Street, which was also one of the Netanyahu's destinations. This place is equipped with a nuclear shelter. This report from Benjamin Netanyahu's residence in Simon's villa has been recorded by the Israeli Channel 13 journalist.
אנחנו? לא, אנחנו עיתונאים.
למה אתה פה?
למה אתה פה?
באתי לאבטח את ראש הממשלה.
מצוין, אנחנו מצלמים את בית ראש הממשלה.
עכשיו 9.
שערוריה, שהוא פה. הוא מתחבא.
מתחבא?
כן. בווילה הגדולה יש מקלט רציני. גדול.
אנחנו באנו פה לצלם את השכן החדש שלכם.
כבר לא כל כך חדש.
כמה זמן כבר ככה?
פחות או יותר מתחילת המלחמה. זה עבר תמוה, אבל בסדר.
מי השכן החדש, אתה יודע?
פה?
כן.
אין מישהו חדש פה. פה אין חדשים.
ומי גר פה?
פולק.
פליק.
פליק.
אתה רואה שהמשטרה עוד פה. כשהמשטרה עוד פה זה עוד לא יצא.
10:45 עכשיו.
עוד שעה.
What's special about this house?
It's on Caspi Street. It's the nicest street in Jerusalem.
זה הנוף שגם ראש הממשלה רואה בבית של פליק?
כן, בוודאי. עכשיו 6, ההסלמה בצפון. בדקות האחרונות...
הבית שלי כאן. אני באתי לכאן מסיבה אחת, שמהחלון אנחנו רואים את הר הבית. יש כאן הרבה הפגנות, וזה בושה וחרפה. בזמן מלחמה לא עושים הפגנות. קיקרו אמר, בזמן מלחמה החוקים שותקים.
אהלן. היי. מי אתם? למה אתם שמים פה? למה? כי זה מעון ראש הממשלה.
The King David Hotel in Jerusalem is one of the Netanyahu's favorite hotels, known for its high cost. Another favorite place is the Dan Caserio Resort, which also provides premium services. Despite being allocated a fully equipped prime ministerial residence on Gaza Street, Netanyahu spends many nights at this hotel, the expenses of which he selfishly exploits are covered by the government. Netanyahu, who tends not to leave his residence much earlier than 11 in the morning due to the distance from the Prime Minister's office, wastes a considerable amount of time. In the first security meeting following the October 7th attack, scheduled for 6 in the evening on the same day, he arrives an hour late. Public anger against Netanyahu has surged since the Hamas attack, with some accusing him of failing to prevent the surprise assault and overseeing a sluggish government response. According to the Israeli Prime Minister's office, more than 1,200 people have been killed in Israel and 6,900 others have been injured. Israeli officials report that 383 Israel Defense Forces soldiers have lost their lives since October 7, including 68 since the ground campaign began. A lack of support for the approximately 120,000 people displaced by the war and perceived indifference toward the families of the estimated 240 hostages seized by Hamas have also fueled Israeli public anger. Netanyahu is losing the war at home due to incompetence against Hamas and indifference to Israeli suffering, causing the public to boil over. So far, Netanyahu has not accepted personal responsibility for the failures that allowed the surprise assault, during which hundreds of Hamas fighters stormed into southern Israel on October 7, killing more than 1,400 people and taking at least 240 captives. Public anger in Israel is on the rise, with many families of the captives held in Gaza bitterly critical of the government's response and calling for their relatives to be brought home.
If I have to summarize my book, I'd say I've lived a life of purpose. I continue with a life of purpose. And the purpose is to ensure the security and prosperity